And welcome back. American Zionist Movement is a unifying force for 45 national Jewish Zionist organizations. Now, with a rich history spanning 125 years, the AZM actively deepens the American Jewish community's connection to Israel and Zionism. Now, recently, they faced some challenges condemning the Students for Justice in Palestine and standing in solidarity with Israel amid a brutal attack by Hamas. Joining me now and sharing more, the Executive Director of the American Zionist Movement, Herbert Block, and good to have you here with us.
Thank you, nice to be here.
Thank you. So for somebody that's not so familiar with the organization, please give us a little walkthrough.
So as you described, we are an umbrella body of 45 organizations that we convene national Jewish organizations that focus on promoting Zionism in Israel. The Zionist movement was launched 126 years ago now by Theodor Herzl and led to the creation of the modern state of Israel in 1948. The Zionist movement continues as an entity that unifies Jewish people in support of Israel and Zionism and strengthens the connection between Jews around the world and the state of Israel. In particular, our role is to do that in the United States.
How's the message been going across when you talk about messaging?
The last number of weeks since as you referred to it, the brutal Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th have been really challenging time for our community. Israel and Zionism is not defined by this moment, but it's a challenge that we will overcome. The Zionist movement, as I mentioned, strengthens the connection between Jews around the world, as we call the diaspora, and our national Jewish homeland in Israel. And we have seen those bonds really tightened in the last number of weeks because of both the so many connections that people here in America have with family and friends in Israel, many of whom have been attacked and kidnapped and killed. Everyone knows somebody or one degree connection, and also the rising anti-Semitism that many of us have experienced throughout this country here. Some of it driven by the reactions to what has been going on in Israel and Gaza.
Yeah. So when we talk about Zionism right now, and I look at Zionism forward, part of it is strengthening the support for Israel, for the Jewish people, and Zionism. Connect the dots, if you will, for somebody who may not be so familiar in this area, because when we talk about the ideology and the cause of Zionism, how does somebody connect those dots?
So the modern Zionist movement really begins historically, where the Zion is throughout the Bible, and Zion is the name for the Jerusalem, the land of Israel, the biblical homeland of the Jewish people, a land that is now home to many faiths. And the Zionist movement in the modern era began with establishing seeking to establish the Jewish homeland in what is now the land of Israel. And it is a national liberation movement to establish a homeland for the Jewish people, as many other groups and faiths and religions have around the world. And the Zionist movement continues because the work of perfecting the state, building the state, and connecting the Jewish people to the Jewish homeland is not finished. Unfortunately, we're now in a state of war because there are people, Hamas among them, and other terrorists and people who seek to destroy the Jewish state, who do not want there to be a Jewish homeland, and instigated a brutal attack on Israel, on the Jewish people, on October 7th. So the Zionist movement is building the connection of American Jews, in the case of AZM, with the land of Israel and the people of Israel and the state of Israel, but now defending that in light of what's been going on since October 7th.
Yeah. Talk to me about, when we talk about Israelis, the right of Israel living in peace, living in harmony. I know that's part of a mission, right? But where are we now?
So we're in a situation now where, unfortunately, there are those in this case, Hamas in the south, Hezbollah in the north, and others led by Iran, who seek to destroy the state of Israel, don't want there to be a Jewish homeland. If there's anything that has really, I wouldn't even say a silver lining, but that's come out of this horrific situation, is the unity among the Jewish people, because Zionism is prevalent among the vast majority of the Jewish community, the overwhelming majority of the Jewish community. And there is many, as I said, and you indicated, there's 45 groups in AZM. We have groups from the Orthodox to Reform, Conservative, LGBT community, youth groups, women's groups, all across the country. And there are, Zionism is prevalent in every aspect of American Jewish life, because its connection to the land of Israel and our biblical ancestral homeland is prevalent among everything we do every day in our prayers and our daily life and our activities as Jews and as Jews in America. And so we feel the attack that's been happening here. There are people who don't want there to be a Jewish state, and we seek to have a Jewish state that lives in peace with its neighbors, the Arab countries around it, that seeks to live in peace with the Arab and Palestinian residents of the land, with Christians, with others. There's if you've been to Israel, I don't know if you have been,
Yes.
but you go to Jerusalem, there's every faith there. There's people worshiping in every way, and that's something that we celebrate, and we want there to be a Jewish homeland that's open to all, that we can live in safety and security with our neighbors and with everybody, without having to be attacked and butchered or murdered simply because people are Jewish living in the land.
Yeah, I have been played basketball out and played Maccabi Tel Aviv, and so I've had a couple games out there, and so very familiar. But I do know that when we talk about the culture, that culture, I remember being in that culture and hearing words of peace and unity. But when we look at where we are today, of course, we're far away from that. Talking about local community, right? How's the local community dealing and playing out in the midst of all of this right now?
It's a very trying time. I know there was some movie or show about 6 degrees of separation, but in the Jewish community case, it's probably 1 or 2. The Jewish community here, and individual Jews and families in America, most everybody knows somebody, a friend of somebody, 1 or 2 connections to people in Israel. I myself have a son who's living in Israel, who's a soldier in the reserves in the Israel Army, now activated. But if you find any Jewish American, they're going to have a very close connection to somebody in Israel. So the community here is impacted deeply by what took place on October 7th, and the mobilization and the displaced families in the north and the south. But we're also impacted locally because there's been a rise of anti-Semitism, of attacks on Jewish institutions, of rallies that have crossed not only into being against policies of the Israeli government, but have been anti-Semitic in their nature, because they're anti-Zionist and they're attacking the Zionism of the Jewish people. And so it's something that people hear about every day, rallies and protests and graffiti and threats to synagogues and JCCs and institutions. So the aftermath of this war, which is ongoing, is impacting Jewish Americans here in New York City and around the country as well.
When we talk about the Israeli-Palestine conflict, a lot of questions continue. I think there is so many people out there who say, I see it playing out, but I'm really not too sure how this whole thing got started. When we look at some of the root causes, I know you address some of the root causes of this conflict.
Right. So obviously there's different peoples living in the same land. There was the UN almost 76 years ago, November 29th, 1947, voted a partition plan to divide the land that had been the Ottoman Empire and then the British Mandate into a Jewish state and a Palestinian Arab state. Israel accepted it. The Jewish people accepted it. The State of Israel was born on May 14th, 1948, and then rejected but that was rejected by the Palestinians. And there was a war, and the West Bank and other areas were captured, and Gaza were captured by Jordan and Egypt. And then there was the Six-Day War in 1967, and Israel took it back. And Israel gave back the Gaza area to the Palestinian people. The Palestinian Authority was created in the West Bank. The Palestinians have really never accepted the creation of a Jewish state. And there's been waves of terror over the years. The people of Israel want to live in peace with our Arab and Palestinian brothers and sisters, and those communities in Gaza, in what's known as the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. But you need to have a partner for peace, and we do need to get back to a situation where we can have those negotiations, those talks to establish a way to live together. There have been proposals over the years by every U.S. administration trying to broker a deal, some would call the two-state solution, or other solutions that have been proposed. And our aspiration is to have a Jewish state living in peace with neighbors next door, where everyone, their families, can live in security and go about their daily lives and schooling and families with a sense of harmony and peace, and not worrying about whether you'll survive the day.
Yeah. A lot of anti-Semitism that goes on and exists in our community right now. And we've had the ADL on, and they've shared with us a little bit about how there's a rise, and particularly in the tri-state region of anti-Semitism. Talk to me a little bit about anti-Zionism, right, and dealing with anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, the work that you're doing to basically ensure that we can deal with this appropriately.
So we have seen, and I've been in the organization 7 years almost, I've seen a change where maybe 7 years ago people weren't sure if anti-Zionism is a form of anti-Semitism. My father was a rabbi, actually wrote a book in 1990s and said, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? He said, not necessarily, but almost certainly. And we've seen that basically come true in the last couple of years, especially in this conflict. So when people are attacking Zionism, which is the fundamental to the beliefs of the overwhelming majority of the Jewish community, and they're attacking our homeland, they're really attacking the Jewish people. And so that's a form of anti-Semitism. So it's really inconsistent to say, well, I'm just anti-Zionist, but I'm not anti-Semitic, because, with minor exceptions, if you're anti-Zionist these days, you're crossing the line into anti-Semitism, because you're attacking our identity, my identity as a Jew and a Zionist. So we are working with all our organizations and with partners like the ADL and the Jewish Community Relations Council and UJ Federation and many organizations to promote the understanding of what Zionism is, why it's connected to the Jewish people, why we need a state of Israel and as our homeland, and to promote Zionism in a positive way, and also to combat anti-Semitism, which there is anti-Semitism, of course, not only linked to Israel and Zionism.
As we look around right now, we know that a lot is seen on video in terms of victims of these attacks. What's been the work being done to support families, victims? Because even though it's international, definitely has a national impact, relatives, the like. So give us a little bit of insight from your perspective on how things have been going in terms of remembering, dealing, and helping families out and navigating this time.
So obviously there have been many responses in America, collecting goods and supplies, or plane loads of things that went to Israel. The AZM, along with others, have been collecting funds. We're supporting relief efforts coordinated by the World Zionist Organization in Israel with partners. I was there a few weeks ago and saw the situation firsthand, both the aid that's being provided, and the horrors of what took place, whatever we've all seen on videos, is horrific, and some of it you can barely watch. And but when you see the situation in Israel firsthand and talk to people, it's even more horrific to visit these villages and towns and see the displaced families, and it breaks one's heart to see it up close. And so the American Jewish community and AZM and our organizations have rallied. The needs are so great, both of the victims and the families who have been displaced, and especially to talk about the hostages. I'm wearing a pin, Bring Them Home Now, and many are wearing these military tags that say Bring Them Home Now, because we all feel a connection. People have a personal connection or one degree to a family whose loved one has been taken hostage. Thankfully, 100 or so were released, but there's more than 100 who are still captive in Gaza. And so while we're working to support the people of Israel and the families whose members have been called up to military service, and the displaced families, we're also advocating every day and praying every day for the release of the hostages, because there can't be any end to this until the hostages are released and the leadership of Hamas, the terrorist organization, is destroyed and eliminated and cannot perpetrate another attack. So there's many efforts both to advocate for the release of the hostages and to financially support the people in Israel affected.
Can you briefly share, Herbert, a little bit about what maybe we don't see, right? Because you were there, and obviously we get cameras, and we can only go where cameras take us. But I always know that there's another story that the cameras don't show.
Right.
What are we not seeing?
So you're not seeing the resilience of the Israeli people. I don't know how much your viewers would follow the news earlier in the year, but there were protests in Israel about domestic policies on reforming the judiciary and the electoral system, and we have politics in America like they have politics in Israel. There were divides on all of those things and disputes with the policies of the government in Israel, and people for Netanyahu and against. And so we know about those kind of political disputes in America. But once October 7th happened, the people of Israel and the Jewish people around the world unified in a way that we haven't seen maybe ever, in a positive way. So people are pouring out their hearts and volunteering. You have hundreds of thousands of displaced people in the north and the south living in hotels, living in temporary apartments, who had to flee with the shirt on their back, and the society has rallied around to help them in their temporary situation, provide support. Families whose husbands, wives, sons, daughters are called up to the military have affected all the operations of society. The foreign workers who work in many of the fields left, so there are many people who are going and volunteering. My family and I, we picked tomatoes and chili peppers, and people are working the fields to help the agricultural society. So there's a resilience and there's a connection, but this war has permeated every aspect of society, and everyone is scrambling to help in some way. So you're seeing resilience, but a country in turmoil because of what's happened, not just on the battlefield.
Herbert Block, tell us how we can get in touch with you. People may want to get in touch and just say, hey, we're helping with the movement. How do they go about doing that?
So our website with a lot of information is azm.org, American Zionist Movement.org, azm.org, and the email is azm@azm.org. And you can reach out to us on social media also, or through our website, through email, and be in touch and help us support the cause of Zionism and bring the Jewish people together.
Herbert Block, great having you.
Thank you.
Executive Director of the American Zionist Movement. Want to tell you, make sure, as he said, you can access the website, find out more information, and then you can get in touch with him as well.